Hello everybody, my name is Annie. I teach 5th and 6th grade here at ILE. Today I would like to teach a lesson about Earth systems. So we are going to explore the 4 different Earth systems called spheres. We're also going to track how matter and energy flows through the Earth system, specifically in the water cycle. We're also going to study positive and negative feedback. Okay, so without further ado, let's just start the lesson. So the first question I want to ask you is, what are Earth systems? So to understand this question, I think we should first define what a system is. And a system is a group of parts that work together as a whole, usually to carry out a function or a job. An easy way to think about system is you can compare it to human body systems. So for example, the human body is a total system. It's made up of subsystems such as the cardiovascular system, which will include your heart and lungs. It also includes the nervous system, which will include your brains, your spinal cord, your nerves. It will include your skeletal system or your muscular system. And they work together to carry out human life processes. And just like that, Earth's system is also made up of 4 subsystems. They're often called spheres. The first sphere is called the biosphere, including plants or animals. We also have the atmosphere. As you can see, it will be the air surrounding the Earth. We also have the hydrosphere, which includes all water on Earth. And finally, we have the geosphere, which would be the ground, the rocks, the solid materials that make up Earth's surfaces. So next, let's go into each sphere specifically. The first sphere is called the geosphere. And geo refers to the rocks or the ground, the surface material, the landforms that cover Earth's surface. It also refers to the interior part of Earth, which is mostly made up of rocks and metals as well. So the geosphere, the solid physical part of Earth. So examples, rocks, minerals, mountains, soil, sand, volcanoes, and continents. Okay, if you look at this picture down here, it's actually made up of 4 different layers. Humans or all living organisms, we usually live, or we have to live, on the thin upper layer called the crust. Underneath the crust, we have the mantle, which is thicker. As you can see, it's also usually semi-molten, which means it's partially melted. It also flows. It's in a partially liquid state, which means that because of mantle movement, we sometimes have events happening on the crust, like volcanoes or like an earthquake. The inner parts of Earth, called the core, this is also divided into the outer core and the inner core. The outer core is liquid metal, and the inner core, the very central part that you see here, is solid metal. And this is because Earth's pressure, it's so high, it totally compresses the liquid into solids. The interior part of Earth, the core, it has so much heat or energy. This is one of the sources that drives the cycles of matter throughout the different Earth systems. What I want to illustrate with this picture is, although we're looking at the geosphere, I think we should consider the interactions between the 4 different spheres. Because events that happen in one sphere, it doesn't happen in an isolated manner. It actually affects all the different spheres. So for example, let's take a look at the picture. We have a volcano erupting. As a result, we have, as you can see, gases released into the atmosphere. All the different dust particles, maybe the volcanic ash, the toxic gases, it's actually going to pollute the atmosphere. This may also affect living organisms, the biosphere. We will have to breathe in that polluted air. Or if the ash falls down to the earth as rain or precipitation, living organisms will also have to drink that water, so it will affect the biosphere. And finally, as you can see, the volcanic lava here that flows, if it cools, it may become rocks that will change the surface of Earth, or it could actually melt parts of the landform and change the appearance of the landform. So you can say it's changing the geosphere once again. So as you can see, all four spheres, they are interconnected, and we have a lot of interactions in all four spheres. So next, let's move on to the biosphere. The biosphere is actually the parts of Earth that contain all living organisms. So, all living organisms, we call them biotic factors. Okay, so examples would be, we have fungi, which would include mushrooms or mold decomposers. We have plants and animals. Humans are also part of the biosphere. Okay, we have insects or bacteria, birds, right? Okay, so Earth contains a wide variety of living organisms. You can find them everywhere, which is why Earth is amazing. You can find them deep in the bottom of the ocean, at the Antarctic ice shelf. We find bacteria. You can find them high up in the Himalayan mountains as well. So for biotic factors, yes, we have this really cute desert fox. You can see the trees or the moose or the foxes. This is all part of our biosphere. The biosphere, however, it also contains abiotic factors, which would be the non-living factors that influence the biosphere. And non-living factors are, for example, we would have sunlight, we could have rain, like precipitation, the air, sand or ground or soil, rocks. So these are all abiotic factors that will influence the biosphere and the habitats that these living organisms live in. Next, let's move on to the hydrosphere. So the hydrosphere refers to all water on Earth. And water, it can exist in 3 states of matter. So we can have liquid water. We can also have solid water in the form of ice or snow. Water exists as a gas. It's an invisible gas. We call it water vapor. It is in the atmosphere. So the hydrosphere, guys, if you look at the hydrosphere, Earth is covered with over 70% of water, so it's a huge amount. This water, we can divide it into fresh water and salt water. Fresh water actually makes up only 3% of the hydrosphere. And it's contained in rivers or lakes, glaciers. It soaks into the ground as groundwater. Okay, it's frozen as ice in glaciers or snow on top of mountains. Salt water, it's the majority of water on Earth. It takes up 97% of all of Earth's water. And yes, finally we have water vapor, the invisible gas in the air. So guys, for the hydrosphere, actually it performs an important function, if you look at this part. So the function of the hydrosphere is that all the bodies of water on Earth, they actually absorb heat or energy from sunlight. And this moderates or kind of regulates Earth's temperature. So for example, in the wintertime, if you live near the ocean, if you live in a coastal community, because the ocean water actually soaks up heat and releases that heat back into the atmosphere, your village will probably be a little less cold compared to inland areas. Also, for the hydrosphere, we can include the frozen parts of the hydrosphere, like the glaciers, the sea ice, the snow or ice on top of the mountains. The frozen part of the hydrosphere, we call it the cryosphere. And scientists like to include this as the 5th part of the hydrosphere, or the 5th part of Earth's spheres. Okay, let's go on to the atmosphere. So the atmosphere refers to the gases that surround or envelope planet Earth here, as you can see. The gases are actually made up of, the majority is nitrogen gas. So 78% is nitrogen gas. We also have oxygen. which is essential for life on Earth, it's 21%. The other gases would be, for example, ozone. We also have carbon dioxide. We have dust particles and water vapor in the atmosphere as well. Just like the hydrosphere performed the function of regulating temperatures on Earth, similarly, atmospheric gases, they work together, first of all, to regulate global temperatures. Okay. They prevent Earth from swinging into extreme temperatures, either too hot or too cold. Also, because we have the gases surrounding the Earth, this will prevent and shield from the sun. So, the solar radiation from the sun, it has harmful ultraviolet rays, and the atmosphere around the Earth, it will shield or protect from some of that solar radiation. Okay, finally, yes, atmosphere will give oxygen to breathe. It will also give carbon dioxide to the plants so they can perform photosynthesis. So we learned about the 4 spheres that make up Earth's system. And in this slide, I want to talk about how water is cycled through all 4 spheres, usually driven by the sun's energy and also by gravity. So basically, this is tracking. It's an example of how matter and energy will flow through the different spheres of Earth. Okay, if you look at this picture, the water cycle first happens usually on the surface of a body of water. Okay, so if you look here, so this is a lake, and the surface of the water is heated by the sun. The sun provides the energy, and molecules of water, they will float up into the atmosphere. We call this process evaporation. So evaporation will happen on the body, so on the surface of bodies of water. A second process, which we call transpiration, it happens in plants like trees, okay? So plants also release water vapor into the air. That second process is called transpiration. Okay, so the water molecules in the air, it floats up in the atmosphere, and when it reaches like cooler temperatures, the water vapor, the gas, it will change back into a liquid in a process which we call condensation. And condensation, it creates clouds. And when clouds become dense or heavy with water, it will fall back to the earth. It's going to release water in the form of precipitation, so rainfall, or if it's really cold, as snow. Okay, the water that is released back to the surface of Earth, okay, we say it's collected into other bodies of water or streams, rivers, it flows off and becomes runoff. And that completes the water cycle. So, as we just learned, what I want to mention is that the spheres are interconnected. So even though water evaporates in the hydrosphere, so it starts in the hydrosphere, as you can see, it rises into the atmosphere. That water is cycled back onto the ground. It's collected in the ground, which is the geosphere. And then humans or animals or plants, they will use the water for living processes. So the biosphere is also part of the water cycle. So the final slide, the final part of our lecture today is about feedback systems. Okay, what is a feedback? So a feedback is when one change influences another change, which results in the first change also being affected or changing. So, for example, in feedback systems, we have positive feedback and we also have negative feedback. Positive feedback is when the changes that occur actually strengthen or reinforce, maybe it speeds up the process. For negative feedback, the changes, it actually stops or slows down or even reverses the whole system. Then we call it a negative feedback. So the example that I want to talk about today would be the vanishing Arctic ice in the polar regions. Okay, this is an example of a positive feedback. Why is this positive feedback? So let's look at the changes that occur. Okay, so first step is temperatures rise. And this is because generally global warming these days, it's causing temperatures to rise. My students, you may have felt this because summers in Korea are hotter than ever before. When temperatures rise, the problem is that the ice in the polar regions, they start melting. And if you remember, students, so the ice is part of the cryosphere, and in the previous slide, I explained that the cryosphere performs an important function. It reflects the sun's light or heat energy back into the atmosphere. It regulates Earth's temperature. However, since we have temperatures rising, all the ice is melting, and the dark ocean is revealed. Also, the ground is revealed. So the darker ocean and the dark earth, the surface, it's going to suck up more energy from the sun, and this is going to contribute to temperatures rising again. So as a result, as you can see, temperatures rise, the ice melts. When the ice melts, the darker parts of the surface are revealed, which actually accelerates or speeds up temperatures, making it rise even higher, and then it goes on in a loop. So we call this a positive feedback because it speeds up the whole process. Although it is positive feedback, it's not necessarily positive for the planet. So as you can see, we have polar bears here. They are examples of organisms that are actually harmed by this positive feedback loop. Because the Arctic ice is melting, they're losing their habitats. And although you may think that humans are not affected that much by Arctic ice melting, humans also are affected because if Arctic ice melts, sea levels rise all over the earth. As a result, maybe the land we live on, it could become submerged or flooded. So as we talked about, I want to remind you that planet Earth, all the different systems, they are interconnected with each other, they affect each other, and the choices we make today, it may bring about positive or negative changes as a result in the future. So, today we learned about the 4 systems of Earth, the atmosphere, the geosphere, the hydrosphere, and the biosphere. We learned about the water cycle, and we learned about feedback systems. So, I hope you enjoyed my lecture, and I will be pleased to see you in my class. Thank you.